Hey everyone, thanks for tuning in. If you're new here, consider subscribing. It really helps keep these stories coming. And while you're here, let me know in the comments where you're listening from. Now, sit back, relax, and let's get into the story. I've always been the quiet one at the office. Not out of choice, but because every time I opened my mouth, someone found a way to shut me down. Whether it was Kevin laughing at the way I pronounced Excel during a meeting, or Rachel conveniently forgetting to CC me on important emails, I got the message. Stay invisible. For years, I did just that. I wore plain clothes, kept my head down, and nodded when spoken to. I was the guy who microwaved his lunch after everyone else had theirs, the one who gave up his seat when the office was packed. I was background noise until the world changed. That morning started like any other. The city outside was wrapped in gray clouds, the kind that looked like they wanted to cry but couldn't quite commit. I stepped off the bus and made my way into the glass tower that housed our corporate hive. Floor 23. Marketing. Cubicles lined like cages. It even smelled the same: coffee, stress, and the faint tang of printer ink. I clocked in, sat at my desk, and stared at my monitor. Emails, reports, data entry, just another day. Or so I thought. The first clue came around 9:15. Kevin burst into the office, pale and gasping. His tie was missing and his usually perfect hair was damp and messy. Everyone stared. He didn't say a word, just stood there, shaking. Rachel approached him cautiously, offering a half smile. "Rough night?" Kevin looked at her, then vomited all over the floor. That's when we noticed the blood on his hands and the bite mark on his neck. At first, we thought he'd been mugged, that he needed help, but when he lunged at Rachel with a guttural snarl and took a chunk out of her shoulder, the illusion shattered. She screamed, a high-pitched, soul-ripping sound that sliced through the office noise like a siren. People scattered. Some ran, others froze. I did what I always did, nothing. I sat there, locked in my seat, eyes wide, heart pounding. Security showed up minutes later, drawn by the commotion. One of them approached Kevin, who was now hunched over Rachel's twitching form. The guard didn't get 2 words out before Kevin turned and leapt on him like a wild animal. Blood sprayed the carpet. I ducked under my desk. My breath came in shallow gasps. My fingers trembled. I couldn't wrap my head around what I was seeing. It didn't make sense. This wasn't how people acted. This wasn't real. But the sounds told a different story: screams, crashing furniture, the sickening wet noise of something chewing. I heard a printer fall over, then someone cried for help, then nothing. I don't know how long I stayed under that desk, maybe 10 minutes, maybe 30. When I finally peeked out, the office looked like a battlefield. Desks overturned. Blood smeared across the walls. A hand on the floor. Just a hand, no body. And Rachel was standing again. Only it wasn't Rachel anymore. Her skin had turned an ashen gray. Her eyes were clouded. Her jaw hung slack, stained red. She moved with a jerky, unnatural gait. When she walked past my desk, I held my breath so hard my ribs ached. I had 2 choices: stay hidden or make a run for it. I chose the latter. I grabbed my backpack, crawled toward the hallway, and avoided every eye line I could. The smell was thick, like old meat left in the sun. My shoes stuck slightly to the carpet. I didn't look down. The elevator was out, lights flashing red. Someone had jammed a chair into the doors. Blood streaked the handle. I bolted for the stairwell instead. That's when I heard it. A soft thump behind me. I turned. Kevin. His suit was torn, his face smeared, and he was smiling. But not with his eyes. Kevin locked eyes with me as I stood frozen in the hallway. It wasn't a smile on his face anymore. It was hunger. Not the kind that craves lunch, the kind that craves you. I bolted for the stairwell, nearly tripping on the corner of a broken office chair. Kevin let out a throaty growl and charged after me. My fingers fumbled with the door handle, slick with sweat. I yanked it open and slammed it behind me just as his footsteps pounded closer. The heavy stairwell door clicked shut. I didn't waste time listening. I ran. Down 23 flights of stairs. My legs burned, my lungs felt like they were filled with ash, but adrenaline kept me moving. Each floor I passed echoed with chaos. Shouts, banging doors, distant sirens. The deeper I went, the louder everything became. Something was unraveling fast. By the time I reached the lobby, I was drenched in sweat. The glass front of the building was shattered. Papers swirled like autumn leaves. Outside, the streets were no better. Cars crashed, fires in the distance, people screaming and running in every direction. I watched a man run down the sidewalk with 3 of them chasing him. He fell. They didn't give him a second to recover. I ducked behind a potted plant near reception, trying to think. I didn't have a car. I lived 3 bus stops away, but I couldn't trust public transport now. There was no telling who or what might be aboard. I needed a weapon, something to protect myself. I crawled behind the security desk. The guards were gone, but one had dropped his baton. I picked it up, tested the weight. It was heavier than I expected, cold in my hand. I didn't want to use it, but I was quickly realizing I might have to. A whimper to my left startled me. Behind a column, I found Sarah, the intern. She was clutching a stapler like it could save her life. She looked up at me, eyes wide. "Are they gone?" I nodded, though I wasn't sure. "Come on, we can't stay here." Together, we slipped outside. The sky was darker now, clouded over with smoke. A chopper whirled in the distance, but it wasn't stopping. It just kept going, like it didn't see us. Or didn't want to. We kept to the alleyways. I knew this part of the city. I'd taken 100 smoke breaks back here, leaning against brick walls, wondering why I kept working a job where I didn't matter. Funny, now that job had collapsed in blood and broken glass, and I was still wondering who I was without it. We moved fast, quiet. Every sound made us jump. A trash can clattering in the wind, a car alarm in the distance. At one point, we passed a diner with the front door wide open. I peeked in and immediately looked away. Inside, a waitress was slowly rising to her feet, missing half her jaw. Sarah saw it too. Her hand gripped my arm so tight I could feel her nails through my shirt. We reached a pharmacy a few blocks over. The door had been pried open, but it was empty, at least for now. Inside, I found bottled water and some first aid supplies. Sarah grabbed snacks, crackers, peanuts, anything sealed. I took a moment to sit and think. "What's happening?" she whispered. "I don't know," I admitted. "But it started fast. I think it's spreading." She sank against the counter. "My phone's dead. No signal earlier. What about yours?" I pulled it out. No bars, no Wi-Fi. The screen flashed red with a warning. Emergency broadcast in progress. But no message followed. "I think we're on our own," I said. That's when we heard the noise, metal clanging against the back entrance. Something, or someone, was trying to get in. We didn't wait to find out who. I grabbed Sarah's hand and we ducked out the front. The streets were worse now. The panic had spread. People were running with bags, dragging children, breaking windows. Some were fighting over supplies. Others were just staring, hollow-eyed, as the world burned around them. We were halfway across the next street when I saw a familiar figure in the chaos. Mr. Lambert, my boss. He was stumbling forward, hands twitching at his sides. His tie was soaked in something dark, and his mouth hung open. One of his eyes was gone, just a red hollow where it used to be. I stopped. All the meetings, all the times he humiliated me for fun, called me deadweight, laughed when Kevin erased my name from the team board after I finished the project. Now he looked like a puppet with cut strings. He turned toward me, and then he ran. Mr. Lambert was fast, way too fast for someone with one eye and a twisted leg. I barely managed to pull Sarah behind a parked delivery truck before he reached us. He slammed into the side of the vehicle with a thud, then started circling around. His fingers scraped the metal. His breathing was heavy, more like growling than panting. "We can't outrun him," I whispered. "Stay low." She nodded, trembling. Lambert came around the front, eyes locked on us. I didn't think, I acted. I stepped forward and swung the security baton as hard as I could. It connected with a sickening crunch. He staggered, off balance, but still upright. I hit him again and again. The third strike finally sent him collapsing to the pavement. I stood over him, breathing hard, hands shaking. He didn't move. Sarah stared, wide-eyed. You knew what to do." I didn't. I just knew I didn't want to die in a crosswalk with my former boss gnawing on my face. We kept moving, ducking through side streets, trying to stay off the main roads. The city was falling apart around us. Helicopters buzzed overhead, fires raged in the distance, and sirens never stopped. In one alley, we passed a woman cradling a child. Both were still. I didn't look long enough to see why. My apartment was 5 blocks away, near an old laundromat and a boarded-up bookstore. I wasn't sure it was safe, but it was familiar, and I had supplies. More importantly, I had keys. We reached it by late afternoon. The sun was low, casting long shadows across the sidewalk. My building had graffiti on the side and a broken front buzzer, but the door was locked. Still secure, for now. Inside it was quiet. Too quiet. My neighbors, usually noisy and nosy, were gone. I led Sarah up 3 flights to my unit. I locked the door behind us, then bolted it. Windows, intact. Water, running. Fridge, stocked, more or less. She sat on the floor, legs pulled to her chest, breathing slowly. I handed her a bottle of water. We didn't talk much. There wasn't much to say. Night fell quickly. The city lights outside flickered, then died altogether. Darkness rolled in like a wave. My apartment became a silent box, lit only by a single flashlight I found in my junk drawer. We tried the radio. Nothing but static. Tried my laptop, no internet. Our world had shrunk to a 600-square-foot apartment, 2 scared people, and a baton with dried red stains. Sarah eventually drifted off, curled up on the couch under a blanket. I stayed by the window watching. From my 3rd-floor window, I saw fires burning across the skyline. A car alarm wailed in the distance. Shadows moved below. Some walking, some limping, some running. At one point, I saw a woman standing in the middle of the road, arms outstretched like she was waiting for someone. She never moved. Not even when a truck barreled through the intersection and flipped onto its side. I didn't sleep that night. At around 2 a.m., I heard scratching at the front door. Soft, careful, like someone trying not to be heard. I froze. Then came a whisper. "Help." It wasn't a voice I recognized. I approached the door quietly, heart pounding, and looked through the peephole. A man stood in the hallway, face streaked with dirt, eyes frantic. He looked normal. Breathing hard, drenched in sweat. "Please," he said again. His voice muffled through the door. "They're everywhere. Let me in." Behind him, the hallway lights flickered. I hesitated. Sarah stood beside me now, wide awake, eyes full of questions. "I don't know him," I whispered, "but he's not—" The man looked over his shoulder. Then he pressed both palms to the door. "Please," he repeated. "They're right behind me." And that's when we heard it. The shuffle. The low, inhuman moan. He turned and screamed. Then something yanked him backward, fast. He disappeared from the peephole. I stepped back, heart in my throat. Outside the door, silence. Then the scratching began again. Only now, it wasn't careful. It was hungry. The scratching didn't stop. It got louder, angrier, fingernails or claws raking against the wood like it was meat. The doorknob rattled once, twice, then silence. Sarah and I stood motionless. We didn't speak. We barely breathed. Then, without warning, the noise stopped altogether. Not a whisper, not a shuffle, just quiet. The kind of quiet that makes you feel like the air's holding its breath. I backed away from the door and slowly pushed my couch across the entrance. It wouldn't stop them, not really, but it made me feel like I was doing something. We stayed up the rest of the night. Morning came like a trick. Dim gray light bleeding through the window blinds, revealing a city that still hadn't caught its breath. I gave Sarah half a granola bar and split the last bottle of water between us. Then we turned the radio on again. This time, something broke through the static. This is an emergency broadcast from the National Emergency Response Unit. If you are hearing this, seek shelter. Stay off major roads. Do not engage with infected individuals. Repeat, do not engage. A temporary safe zone is being established at— The message cut out. Static again. But it was something. A safe zone. Sarah looked at me. "We should go." I know. I didn't want to. My apartment was secure, familiar, but the food wouldn't last, and sooner or later the ones outside would come back, maybe with friends. I packed what we had: protein bars, water, a pair of knives from the kitchen, taped the flashlight to the baton. Gave Sarah a screwdriver from my toolbox. Not ideal, but better than nothing. We took the fire escape. Easier to slip out the back that way. The street was calmer than it had been. No screaming, no explosions. Just the occasional distant thud or low groan. We moved fast, hugging walls, eyes scanning every doorway and alley. I felt exposed in the daylight, like the sun was just a giant spotlight showing the whole world where we were. We made it 6 blocks before everything went sideways. We turned a corner and almost ran right into them. 3 of them. Their heads snapped in our direction the second we appeared. One had no nose. Another wore what looked like a delivery uniform, soaked in dried red. The third was barefoot, dragging 1 foot behind the other, but still moving way too fast. They charged. We ran. I led Sarah down an alley, hurdled a trash bin, yanked open a door that led into an old mechanic's garage. We slammed it behind us and shoved a steel cart in front of it. Inside it was dark. Tools hung from pegboards. A half-disassembled engine sat on a table. Everything smelled like rust and oil. We waited in silence, breath held, as the pounding started. They knew we were in there, but the door held. For now. "We need a plan," Sarah said quietly. I nodded. I was already scanning the room. There, on the wall, an emergency fire axe. Heavy but sharp. "Take that crowbar," I said, pointing to the floor near a tire rack. "We might need it." She grabbed it with both hands and nodded. Her face was pale but determined. I tested the back exit. Locked, but the bolt gave with a solid kick. Outside, the alley was clear. We slipped out, careful not to make noise. We didn't talk until we were 4 blocks farther, hiding behind an overturned bus. I slumped against the side, sweating, exhausted. "You okay?" She nodded, breathing hard. This is crazy. I was supposed to be at my brother's birthday tonight. I almost laughed. I was supposed to have a spreadsheet done by Friday. We sat in silence, listening to the wind whistle through broken glass. Then we heard something strange, music. Faint, distant, but unmistakable. An old pop song echoing down the street. Is that someone's radio? I said. We followed the sound, cautious. It led us to a laundromat. The windows were intact, the doors open. Inside, 5 people sat huddled behind the counters. 2 teens, an older couple, and a guy in a postal uniform. A portable speaker sat on a table playing music far too cheerfully for what was going on outside. They all froze when they saw us. The guy in uniform stood, holding a pipe. You bit? I shook my head. No, we're clean. Prove it? I held out my arms. No scratches, no bites. He motioned us inside. Then shut the door and stay quiet. You're lucky, most folks didn't make it this far. He introduced himself as Daniel, said he'd been trying to make it to the safe zone mentioned in the broadcast. But last I heard, the route's blocked. There's too many of them in the city center. Then we go around, I said. He looked at me like I was suggesting we fly. But I wasn't joking. I had a plan forming. Dangerous, desperate, but maybe our only shot. Daniel didn't like the idea. The industrial tunnels? He said, eyes narrowing. You're out of your mind. But I wasn't. There was an old maintenance route beneath the city, half-forgotten steam and service corridors. I'd heard the custodial guys talk about them back when I worked late nights at the office. One even joked you could get from Midtown to the freight yards without seeing daylight. If the streets were overrun, we needed a new path, one the infected wouldn't be crawling through, at least not yet. Daniel crossed his arms. Those tunnels are pitch black, half flooded and falling apart. Perfect, I said. No one else will be down there. The others hesitated, but they were scared, desperate, just like us. They agreed. It took us 30 minutes to reach the entry point, a rusted metal grate behind an abandoned recycling center. Getting it open wasn't easy. The bolts were fused and the thing weighed a ton. But Sarah and Daniel worked the crowbar and pipe until the metal screamed, then gave way. The air from below was damp and cold, smelling like mold and something long dead. I dropped in first, my flashlight barely cut through the darkness. We climbed down into a corridor of brick and rusted pipework. Water dripped steadily from above. Rats skittered through shadows. Every sound echoed like thunder. This way, I said, pointing left. We moved slowly, careful not to trip. Some areas had collapsed, others were flooded ankle-deep. At one point, we had to cross a metal beam over a deep, dark trench that probably dropped into the sewer system. Sarah slipped once. I caught her. Neither of us said a word. We'd gone maybe 2 blocks underground when the flashlight flickered. No, I muttered, tapping it. It blinked, steadied, then died. Total darkness. I heard someone behind us curse under their breath. Backup light, I said, fumbling in my bag. I had a small keychain one. Barely lit more than a few feet ahead, but it was something. Then came the noise. Scraping, wet and slow. Someone, or something, was in the tunnels with us. Daniel raised his pipe. Behind us. We turned, aiming the beam down the passage. Something was moving through the water, wading slowly. At first, I thought it was just one. Then I saw more shapes behind it. 4, maybe 5. They were crawling. Their skin sagged, their eyes glowed faintly, reflecting the weak light. Their hands slapped the wet floor as they moved. We ran. Through another corridor past rusted junctions and sealed doors, until we found an old maintenance hatch. I wrenched it open and ushered everyone through. Up a staircase, concrete steps slick with moss. Then we burst into a warehouse, empty, silent. Light poured in through broken skylights. We collapsed against crates and pallets, gasping for air. Sarah looked at me. They were down there. Yeah, I said, wiping sweat from my face. I guess we weren't the first ones to think of it. Daniel paced near the window, watching the streets beyond. We're close. The safe zone should be 5 blocks north, through the train yard. I peeked outside. The fence was torn open. Freight cars tipped sideways. Smoke rose from one corner. It wasn't going to be a peaceful walk. Still, we had no choice. We left the warehouse, sticking close to the rail lines, ducking behind train cars, checking every angle. The area was strangely quiet, like the eye of a storm, until we hit the crossing yard. There, in the middle of the tracks, we found the remains of a military convoy. 2 overturned trucks, 1 armored personnel carrier, and 1 tank. Its hatch open, empty. Bodies were scattered, some with gear still on. Helmets, packs, radios. But no movement. "Gear up," Daniel said, already stripping a vest from one of the soldiers. "We'll need everything." I found a side pouch with flares, a pocket knife, and a small radio. Static, but I kept it. Sarah found a backpack full of water bottles and ration packs. Jackpot. We were loading up when we heard the groan. Not behind us. Above. I looked up just in time to see one of them drop off a freight car and land right next to Daniel. It tackled him to the ground. Sarah screamed. I swung the axe and connected, knocking the thing back. Daniel scrambled away, panting, bleeding from a cut on his cheek. More of them were coming, crawling out from the train cars, dropping from roofs, limping through the field. We ran. The safe zone was ahead, surrounded by chain-link fencing and makeshift barricades. We could see soldiers on the other side, real ones, armed, alive. "Help!" I shouted, waving my arms. They turned, saw us, and opened the gate. "Move!" one yelled. "You've got 10 on you." We sprinted the last stretch, hearts hammering, lungs on fire. The undead were right behind us. We dove through the gate. The soldiers slammed it shut. Gunfire erupted behind us. One of the soldiers turned to me. "You made it." I didn't say anything. I just looked at Sarah, still breathing, still alive. Then I looked at my hands, still shaking, still human. The safe zone wasn't what I expected. No clean cots, no warm food, no smiling medics or TV news playing in the background. It was a former construction site turned into a rough camp. Tents made from tarp, floodlights strung on cables, and men and women in uniform who looked just as tired and worn out as we were. They had guns, though, and a fence. That made all the difference. We were immediately separated, screened by medics in protective suits, sprayed down with the decontaminants that stung like acid, and questioned over and over again. "How long were you exposed? Did any of them touch you? Were you bitten?" My answers were short. Clear, I told the truth. We were placed in a quarantine tent near the edge of the camp. Nothing fancy, just cots, water jugs, and the sound of helicopters in the distance. Daniel paced most of the night, occasionally peeking through the flap. Sarah sat on her cot, knees to her chest, not saying much. Me? I lay there, staring at the canvas ceiling, trying to process everything. The people from the elevator, gone. Mark, who mocked me for years, turned into one of them. The mailroom guy, who was always kind to me, now part of the horde. The building where I'd spent so much of my life, now a tomb. And yet, somehow, I was still here, still breathing. Still me. Around 3 a.m., a soldier pulled the flap back. "Looks like you three are clear," he said. "No symptoms. You're being moved to the inner perimeter, safer area." Daniel stood up, relieved. Finally. We followed the soldier through the maze of tents and barricades. The air smelled like diesel and metal. Somewhere nearby, someone was crying. Somewhere else, someone was laughing too loudly, too fast. Trauma changes people. The inner perimeter was better lit. There were larger tents, fire barrels, and people trying to act normal, sharing food, trading stories, clinging to routines. The soldier pointed us toward a spot near the command tent. "You'll bunk there for now." I nodded. "Thank you." He gave me a look, almost sympathetic, then he left. Daniel immediately began checking supplies. Sarah sat again, this time by the fire. I followed. We sat in silence for a while, watching the flames crackle. Then she spoke. "Back there, when you said you had a plan, in the stairwell, did you really think we'd make it?" I thought about it. "No," I said honestly, "I didn't." She let out a breath that was almost a laugh. "I figured." We both stared into the fire for a while longer. At sunrise, they gave us ID tags and a meal, some kind of oatmeal in a pouch and bottled water. It tasted like cardboard and glue, but I didn't care, it was warm. Over the next few hours, I learned more. The outbreak had spread citywide. No one knew how it started. Some said it was something in the water. Others blamed a lab breach across state lines. The truth didn't matter. What mattered was that the world had changed overnight, and I had changed with it. I wasn't the quiet guy in the corner cubicle anymore. I wasn't the one people ignored, laughed at, or pushed around. I'd faced something unimaginable and survived. Not because I was strong, or smart, or brave, but because I finally stopped waiting for someone else to save me. Because when the world collapsed, I stood up. I acted. Later that day, I saw them unloading more survivors from a convoy. One man caught my eye. He was in a suit, bloodied, limping, but still alive. I recognized him. Tom Davis, my boss. The same guy who used to mock me during meetings, take credit for my work and pretend I didn't exist in the break room. He looked over, saw me, and froze. For a moment, he didn't say anything. Then, slowly, he walked up. "Hey," he said, "you made it." I nodded. "Yeah?" He looked like he wanted to say more. Apologize, maybe, or act like none of it had happened. But I turned away, because right now, the past didn't matter. The outbreak didn't care about status, or corner offices, or titles. And neither did I. All that mattered was what came next. Because the first 12 hours were just the beginning. And I wasn't going to be the same quiet office worker anymore. Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like and subscribe. Your support keeps these creepypastas coming. Until next time, stay alert, stay safe, and never ignore the feeling that something is watching.